guys? Hey. Hey, what's up? Good morning, good morning. Just waking up, gotta say, thank you for this God-given talent, feels so great. So I sit in the studio, meditate, smoke on them herbs, never late. Waking up in the morning, yeah, it feels so great. Thank you for this God-given, I can't wait. Up in the studio, hey, 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 hey. Early in the morning, let me think. Up in the studio, really trying to paint. Thank you for this God-given gift, it's so great. Early in the morning, I can't wait. What's up, guys? What's up? Good morning, YouTubers. Good morning, YouTubers. The light seems extra bright for some reason. Let me see how bright it is outside. Some natural light in here. It's not bright enough outside. Oh, what we got going on today? Starting off with that art and education. I meant to be in here already, but I went ahead and started the laundry instead. It's weird, yo. Like, where's my? I came across this guy on Instagram, and he does these performance pieces, and they're just like, I don't know, nothing I've ever seen before. He takes he makes these sugar skulls, and you should check his Instagram out. But his name is Butch Loxon from LA. And if you look at his Instagram and check out the still shots from his performance videos, they're morbidly beautiful. It's something about this skull character that he's created. It's something about the dynamics of the smoke performances, his attire that he wears. The skull guy is always dressed up like he's going to a business meeting. You know, he always has a nice shirt and tie, some slacks, some really nice shoes. But I really cannot pinpoint why I enjoy this so much. I've talked about this several times. There's just something about his visuals that I really find attractive. It really just kind of resonates with me. I'm not sure what it is. Is it the, confronting your own mortality, knowing that we will all be a bag of bones one day? Is it a conversation with death? And then he makes this skull guy looks like someone you almost want to hang out with. So it's like it's kind of scary, but not really. Yeah, okay, what's up? So it's I don't know. It's really odd how I feel about these pieces, but I definitely enjoy them. I've been following him for about a year, and it took a long time for me to even ask him if I could use some of his photographs in my paintings. And we talked for a minute. He was like, "Yeah, that sounds fucking awesome, bro. Go ahead." And so I've started on them for a while, and I've just had them sitting to the side because I did want to finish my own photography. And that's another thing too. Like I really enjoy working with other artists and other photographers and other creatives, but I do like working on my own stuff. So this is a piece that I photographed personally myself with my own camera and everything. Hired the model and found the location and all this good stuff. So I like working on my own stuff, I really do. But when I see somebody else's images that are just so inspiration to me, I always reach out and contact them and ask if I can use some of their stuff in my art. Just the same way I did with Creative Soul Photography, because their stuff is just awesome. And CJW Photography, because his stuff is fucking awesome as well. So I do like dealing and working with other photographers, because I'm not a professional. So my photos look nice, but there is a different quality when you look at other photographers. And so that right there is 2 layers of paint. So 2 more layers of paint, and that one will be done. It looks fucking amazing right now, but I can imagine just some more highlights to envelop that smoke and to get those really wispy, airy clouds of smoke floating up. That shit is gonna be hot. This piece is gonna be hot. So yeah. And my studio is always junky. I got paint. I got a paint palette there. I got a paint palette on the floor. I got clean brushes. I got dirty brushes. I got stacks of brushes. I got tools. I got the pistol. Don't come here and think you're gonna fucking rob me in my studio. It ain't gonna happen. And we are live on YouTube. If you want to see a better, a larger view of the studio and a better picture quality, and plus have the comments to the side of the screen instead of blocking up the image itself, it's always nicer to come over to YouTube and check us out here. We'll be live on YouTube for a while. Normally do like at least 2 hours in YouTube. So not a lot of current events. We've been talking about like just all this negative shit for the past couple of days with all these shootings and fake bombings and more shootings, and it's like I can't even talk about current events right now. That's what I'm talking about. We need to put some shit together. We need to put some shit together. I might paint your beautiful ass. How about that? I was thinking about doing that too. A series of portraits of artists who inspired me. And there are a lot of artists, I may not, communicate this directly to them, but who their artwork does inspire me, who I do look at for ideas and new concepts, and to make sure that I'm pushing myself as hard as I am, because I see some other people's artwork that looks amazing and I'm like, I gotta push myself a little bit harder. But yeah, so you're definitely a major inspiration for me. I love your art, I love your concepts, I love all the themes and how powerful your art is, and I love the fact that you're so vocal and out there and pushing these images. So I would love to work with you. Everything is just, I need to organize this studio a little bit better. Oh well. Stop biting your nails. Damn, that's a bad habit. I hate doing that shit. And I started and I'm thinking to myself like, stop it, stop. It's like, but it's just a little piece of hangnail left. I gotta nibble it off. Next thing you know, your finger's bleeding. It's like, what the fuck did I do? I'm a cannibal. You start sucking your blood and shit. This is for everybody in the room this morning. This bud's for you.
Feel the power of Toyota trucks.
That shit tastes like motivation. It tastes like enthusiasm. I do start painting, I'm not looking for shit. Alright, I'm gonna use this palette.
Hey, music on the track.
There's nobody really on YouTube right now anyway. I mean on Facebook. Hey.
Tastes like enthusiasm. It tastes like enthusiasm. I'm just trying to make it through the chasm. Figure out how to speak the truth and spit it true to the masses.
Hey, music on the track.
The youth I look after. Yeah, cause I'm not a pastor, I cannot preach it, I can just teach it. All the shit I'm after, this is a disaster. Listen, the kids getting taught them benedictions, but no real scriptures, cause it's on the mission to brainwash the system. And yes, I diss them. That is white supremacists, don't miss them. I can see you, I pick you out with vision. Cause you're fake like plastic, see through, no missions. Oh. No missions, too impossible. I'm too hostile, I'm not apostle, I'm just popping and get it, nah. Try to stay on topic, lost that shit though. This white supremacy system, the mission is not impossible. I'm too hostile, trying to break these chains, yeah, in your privilege. Equivalent. Try to break these chains in your privilege. I see you shaking in fear, you're quivering. I see them shaking in fear, I see you quivering. Cold nights, shaking and shivering. But them raw bars, I stay delivering. Yes, you cannot test and dress, man, and not stress the best. It's so simple, these instrumentals, listen to me. Man, I really do feel like writing some shit. I got words, it just, if I can jot them down, if I can jot them down and reformulate. But that's the art and the craft. If you want to freestyle, man, you gotta make it last. You better hold your breath, cause you cannot gab, you cannot drop the bar, man. You cannot pass or surpass anybody who did this for too many years. On the block, too many tears, getting shot, too many peers. I've been to too many funerals, I can't. No, yes, yeah. And I'm still trying to gain some years, cause I need more knowledge for my son and my peers, so I can speak this truth. And I hope you hear that I'm doing it for us, so it make it clear that I'm not I'm not a politician, and I'm trying to get these riches cause I need a pot to piss in. Oh. And I'm not a politician, but I'm getting bitches cause I need a pot to piss in. Oh, hey. Cause I need a pot to piss in. Oh, and I'm not a politician, but I'm trying to get these riches cause I need the pot to piss in. Oh, hey. And I'm not a politician, but I'm trying to, cause I need the pot to piss in. Oh. And I'm not a politician, but I'm out to get these riches cause I need the pot to piss in. Oh. Cause I need the pot to piss in. Oh. Motherfuckers swearing that they got clout, but they ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out. Talking about my hood, my block, and you don't own not a goddamn thing. And that's a goddamn shame.
I don't have a lot of time to say if you switch to Liberty Mutual, you can save $782. That was faster than I thought.
My block, my hood. You own this house, nigga, you paying rent. You don't own this shit. Talking about my block. You confused as fuck, people. We been bamboozled, hoodwink. You don't own the hood. Some good things. Some good things. You don't own the hood, what you think? You been bamboozled, been hoodwinked. Throwing up gang signs, you don't own the hood, what you think? Brother Polite said you live in a white community that's mostly populated by black people. That's all it is. Channel is doing good, guys. I'm really fucking feeling this shit. More people are sharing the videos and commenting on the videos and subscribing to the channel. So just gotta keep producing these fucking cool ass, dope ass images. You know what I'm saying? And keeping myself up on the good shit to know so I can pass the information along. And then so I can connect with smart motherfuckers smarter than me so they can hit me up on the good shit so I can pass it along. Cause each one can teach one if each one can reach one. Yeah, cause each one can teach one. Each one can teach one. Each one can teach one if each one can reach one. But you cannot reach nobody if you don't call. Oh, hey. but you can't reach nobody if you don't start a conversation. I'm just saying, everything ain't gotta be hating, just debating. Simple conversations, I'm saying. Everything ain't gotta be hating, just debating. Simple conversations, I'm saying. Everything ain't gotta be hating, just debating. Simple conversations, I'm saying. Once you on, once you off. Let me see that shit from your perspective. I can sit back and just take it and teach me a lesson. Yes, that's a blessing. That's effervescence. Every time I learn a message, please just speak to me and let me grow just like a seed, so I can proceed to build my own reality. If I know the truth, then you can follow me. Cause if the blind lead the blind, we all lost and we getting tossed in that sauce. But who mixing and who still stirring and who still wishing that we never grow? And that's unfurling, and that means that I'm in a different world then. So I'm trapped in my mind, and that's all by design. Cause they never ever find all the information that'll make my mind really shine. So I can teach you if you listen. It's conversation, it ain't gotta be hating, just debating. And you can teach me right too. But if it's the truth, then I can see that shining in you. And it ain't gotta be all hating, just debating. Little conversation, let's spark it, no waiting. Yeah, and just a little conversation, it gotta be hating, just start debating. Little conversation, conversations, a little conversation, conversation, a little conversations. It ain't gotta be hating, let's start debating. Cause if you can talk to me and tell me the truth, then I can see it shining in you, and I can use that shit as a tool and give it right back to the youth, just like a teacher in school. Cause I'm trying to teach them how to build, how to live, how to survive, and get some real fucking skills that will make your ass stay alive. If the shit do hit the fan, then you know how to slide, you know how to build and survive. You might even can hit the sky, dog, spread your wings and glide. Cause man can't do that too if we get supplied with the right knowledge and energy food. So let's, start a conversation, no hating, just some simple debating. And you can teach me right too. And if I can teach the truth, then I can see it shining in you. Yeah, conversations. Oh man, if I just write some shit, man. Yeah, we can start some conversations. You gotta be hating, just some simple debating. And I can see it shining in you, and that's the truth. Yeah, and that's 100 proof. I ain't trying to be no fool, I'm trying to stand on the top of the roof and shout out, man. Look, I'm dropping them jewels, and I do it like juice. So sip this potion, yeah, it's the proof. A little conversation, a little conversation.
The redesigned Pilot, with room for up to 8. From Honda.
I'll be trying a little bit. Listen, man, I love the music. I used to write music and record music, but that shit is, I gotta force it. You know what I'm saying? everybody can be creative. I know it's hard to explain it, can't complain it, cause when I try to write, I have to strain with that pen to put my words together. Very clever to make it something simple to weather any weather. And through the storm, you can understand me very better. But it still seems hard for me to write them bars and make it seem but something just in me when I get that pencil, it just flows so simply, just like that paint. I mix it so quickly, and look how I blend these colors so swiftly. And yes, it's just more easy for me to be creative on the canvas in my sketchbook, man. Yo, it ain't no challenge. That shit flows from me just like some water. But when I try to freestyle, it's hard to put these words in order. Yeah, and these verses get slaughtered, but I can do both cause it's real fucking fun. And I play with these words and I keep it moving, yeah. Do any cipher, cause if you wanna freestyle, man, just grab the lighter, cause I might hit this bong roller doobie in a blunt, and I give it up, and I can give it how I want, cause these and they call me the Prince, hey. And they call me the Prince. Hey, why your name Prince? Cause my name really Prince. And they call me the Prince. And they call me the Prince. They say, why you say Prince? Cause my name really Prince. That's mean I'm royalty. You can check my fingerprints. And it's really evident that I was heaven sent. And I finally found my passion. So I'ma give a gift that's living in the present. So here's a fucking present. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, second guessing. So if I show you something, man, take it as a lesson. Cause if you teach me something, then I take it as a blessing. Hey, and I call myself Prince, cause my name is really Prince. And that's evident, I don't need no evidence. You can check my fingerprints. I'm his heaven sent, royalty, royalty. And they say your name is Prince. Why you call yourself Prince? Cause my name is really Prince. I don't need no evidence. You can check my fingerprints. Man, I was heaven sent, royalty, royalty, royalty. Cause, ooh.
Thank goodness for Chef Boyardee.
Really? They just had the one rapper do a Chef Boyardee commercial. Woo! Can you say blaxploitation? Jeez. Just take it easy, guys. Y'all ain't gotta be all like blatant with that shit. Hey. What's up? Good morning, everybody. Hey. Welcome to the stream. Damn, I'm feeling nice already. Ooh, shit.
Purchase your tracks today.
You can purchase your tracks today. Alright, so I want to continue working with the reds on this piece. For this piece, of course,
doing it here. Yeah, that blue is like crazy dominant everywhere. It really controls your eye. You know what I'm saying? It's weird how this piece is set up, how your eye like loops around like that. But there is a lot of red in the center. So I started working on the skull, and I got a second layer of paint over most of the skull except for the teeth and around that area. I might save that for a minute, since there is a pretty decent amount of red, just different shades of red. So I'm gonna just stay in that and work on his shirt and the pants, and maybe even go to the brick wall, because this is kind of orangish red back here, and then do the dark blues and blacks of the smoke, and see how it works like that. Okay, Toyota commercials. Bro, I swear I keep talking about how I'm looking for a car, and that's all I hear now is car commercials. Swear to God. All your devices listen to you. All of them listen to you. And then they try to cater advertisements towards your most recent interests.
Purchase your tracks today.
We gotta start the day off with art and education, trying to tame that chaos, yeah. We got to start that day off with art and education, trying to tame that chaos, yeah. Oh, we got to start the day off with art and education, trying to tame that chaos, yeah. We trying to start the day off with art and education, trying to tame that chaos. Ooh, them beats is, let me leave them shits alone for a minute, man. I don't keep fucking with that shit, man. I keep freestyling, I ain't gonna get shit done. So, if you guys don't know, I was interviewed a couple months ago for a reader's blog, actually. So let me get this straight, so I don't say some dumbass shit. So there's a website for readers. It's like a book club. It's called Folklore and Literacy, and they have social media sites and everything. And like I say, it's
Folklore and literacy, storytelling, literacy, self-expression, conversations with books and people. In progress, Black Man reading series. I also love to knit. And so she does this thing with black men who read. And on Instagram, she came across my reader series and was compelled to reach out to me. And we talked about me being in her blog with an interview for the Black Man reading series. And of course, I agreed to it, which was awesome. And over the course of a few weeks, we corresponded back and forth, and she would send me a set of questions, and I would take my time and answer the questions as truthfully and honestly as I could, and send them back to her. And then she'd send me another set of questions. Yo, Stack, what up? And so it went on like that for back and forth, asking and answering questions for 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks. And it took her a week or two to edit. It wasn't a rush project. It was just this is a project of passion of hers, you know what I'm saying? And so we just took our time and talked to each other for a while, and she edited really nicely, and it had to be 2 parts, which was crazy because I didn't realize it was that long. And then when I started reading, I was like, yeah, we did ask and answer a lot of questions. But so I always keep up with her stuff because I do enjoy reading. I am a reader, Am I a part of a lot of book clubs? No, I'm not. But I like reading, and it is a very major part of my art. You know what I'm saying? And I really do try to incorporate a lot of literature in my art. And so I do keep up with her. And so yesterday she posted another book that she's getting ready to read, and it's called Waking Up White. I look forward to reading about author Debbie Irving's awakening in this book, Waking Up White, and finding myself in the story of race, published in 2004. And she writes some more stuff about it. But my comment was, I haven't read her book, but I did listen to an episode of Philip Matthews' show last year where he interviewed Debbie. Really good conversation too. So I didn't even think about it, because I heard the interview before I even her name is Leslie, before I met Leslie. And so it's cool, a lady that I heard on this, so it's a white lady, and she was on a podcast of this black dude, Philip, and they were talking about her book. And I listened to the whole thing, and it was a really good conversation. And then now she pops up and she has the lady's book, and and that's I like people who come along with similar things and are interested in similar topics like that, because I am aware of Debbie, and like I said, I never read her book, but there was a really good interview she did. I listened to the whole thing, and now it makes me want to get her book, because Leslie's going to read it now, so I'm like, I want to read it too now. So I might, and I might do a special series within the series of the reader series. Hear me out now. Okay, listen. So my core idea for the reader series is essentially information that is more valuable to people of African descent, Africans in the diaspora, however you want to call it, black people. So when you look at my reader series, the majority of the books are black authors, and the majority of the people reading the book are black people. That's not by coincidence. You know, that is very structured into this body of work, and now there are some variations in there which I find are cool and are realistic. But now think about this: what if I do? But I like to read the material, or at least have a really good knowledge of the material before I paint it, so that somebody can't ask me like, well, what's about, and then I don't know shit about it. Like, no, 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 no. But and here again now, okay, so I'll finish reading what she says. I look forward to reading the book. Blah, 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 blah. Now a racial justice educator, Irving quotes her husband in the book's introduction. It couldn't have happened to a whiter person. What books have you read in which white people share stories of coming to terms with privilege, white supremacy, etc., and their efforts to break free of the ways in which racism has held them captive? That is something that I might do, because I listen to a lot of these white racial warriors who want to end racism. Tim Wise is really dope as fuck, and I've listened to a couple of hours of Tim Wise, and he's done a movie called White Like Me, and I've watched that, and it's based on his book White Like Me, but I've never read the book, you know what I'm saying? So what if I get a copy of Tim Wise's book? And Jane Elliott is another amazing justice warrior against racism, white supremacy, and Jane Elliott tells white people, like, you are brainwashed to be racist before you're even born. And she's like, all white people are racist, you just can't see it on certain degrees. So get a copy of Jane Elliott's book. And there's this other lady, Helen, oh, I can't think of her last name, and I've listened to 2 lectures on her. She gives this one lecture, and it's titled, What Does It Mean to Be White? And she breaks it down for you. And she's like, anytime there's an all-black cast in the movie, everybody says, it's too black, it's too black. When the Malcolm X movie came out, it was too, and all this stuff. But she was like, there was how many Lord of the Ring movies? Not one black person in it. Nobody said anything about it. And she was like, it's little things like that in our society which programs white people to see the world a certain way. And I think it's dope as fuck when white people point out these instances. And this lady here, Debbie Irving, and she has a book. Maybe I could get copies of their material and read from their perspectives, because I'm reading a book now. It's called Racist America, and it's written by a white guy, but he's attempting to break down the system of white supremacy and explain why white people are as racist as they are, you know what I'm saying? And so that's already in this reader's piece right here, so that's why I'm reading that book now. Debbie, yeah. And that's the thing, and that's why, I don't know, it's hard for white people to believe white people. I mean, it's hard for white people to believe black people. But they'll listen, and it's hard for anybody to believe black people. It's hard for black people to believe black people. But let a white dude tell you something, and you're like, oh, yeah, heard from the white guy. And you'll just eat that shit up. You know what I'm saying? And it's the same thing with white people. Like, you look at a white man and be like, yo, you're racist. Like, nah, nigga, you don't know what you're talking about. But then when white people actually sit down with other white people and stare them in the face and tell them, like, look, there's a fucking problem in our culture. There's a problem in our psyche. There's a problem in our subconscious that's been programmed into us.
it's been programmed into us by society, and we need to do something about it. And there are white people who have, you know, dedicated their lives to this. And that's how Tim Wise, the first lecture he started out, and that's what made me listen to him, because he started out by saying it. He was like, look, the shit I'll say, you wouldn't even pay attention to this shit if I was a black dude. You know what I'm saying? But just because I'm white and I can speak good, you guys are gonna fucking listen to me. And he's like, that in itself proves how racist this country is. You know what I'm saying? And that's it. But so yeah, so this was just a post that I came across this morning, and I normally don't comment on a lot of posts on other people's posts anyway, because sometimes my shit'll get carried away because I talk like this, and I'll be on there like, and so I just be like, nah, I just kind of like shit and just leave it like that. But I was just happy to know that, like, yo, I listened to her in the conversation before. Her shit was totally legit. You know what I'm saying? And it's cool that she has her book. She has a copy of it, and she says she's gonna read it soon. So I may actually listen to some of this.
Yeah, cringeworthy. So I think I'm part of the agitate part of today's program. 7 years ago, I had a series of wake-up calls that were so profound. It was in this course, Racial and Cultural Identities, that Mina just told us about. These awakenings were so profound that when the course was over, I ended up leaving my job, withdrawing from my graduate school program, and embarking on what was a completely unexpected journey into the heart of American racism. That slide wasn't supposed to be up there yet. Well, you can see what my life looked like. What was so stunning to me in this course was that I discovered that my life was deeply tied to racism. I had no idea. I wondered, how had I missed the clues? I grew up in Winchester, Massachusetts. Many of you probably know, beautiful suburb north of Boston. And this is what my childhood looked a lot like. And this felt completely normal to me, because all around me were people who looked and lived like my family. Friends, extended family, characters in my storybooks, even TV families looked and lived like my family. The Brady Bunch, a blended family, this for me was diversity. And what I didn't realize at the time was that constant exposure to people and perspectives so similar to my family's was setting me up to develop a distorted worldview. It was like living in a hall of mirrors, a white bubble. I have to say, I know not all white bubbles are alike, because white American stories vary a lot depending on...
Oh, that black on black violence? Dr. Amos Wilson's black on black violence? I highly doubt you'll find that if you can walk in Barnes and Nobles and find that shit on the shelf. Yeah, black on black violence. Like I say, if you can walk into a Barnes and Nobles and they got a copy of that shit ready on the shelf, man, you need to talk to the manager and shake that man's hand. Yo, manager, who do the ordering? Who you order books for the store? You do? Man, congratulations, bruh. You ordered Dr. Amos Wilson? Man, you amazing, man. How you even know about that shit? You good, boy, you good. You amazing. That'd be some amazing shit. That's just not some, like I say, bro, that ain't something they normally keep on the shelves. That shit is obscure. It really is. They try to hide shit like that. So you gotta fucking... Now, if you got a local, like, Afrocentric bookstore that specializes in shit like that, they damn near guaranteed to have it. If they don't, they need to have that shit. That's one of the most influential, I'm telling you, to this day. Right now, like, how he breaks down the system. I can understand it better, you know what I'm saying? I think I have a better grasp and a better viewpoint and perspective on why we think the way we do.
why the system has been able to carry on as it is for so long is where it's hard to explain in so many words, you know what I'm saying? But read that book, yo. Black on Black Violence. That shit is a goddamn game changer.
Class, era, religion, geography, among other things. So I want to be clear, I am not speaking for all white Americans. This is my story. I'm going to focus today specifically on two ideas which were fundamental to the belief system I developed in my particular white bubble. Neither were explicitly articulated to me. They were more built in small moments over time. So the first idea was that America's playing field was level. I heard phrases like land of opportunity, the American dream, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness for all men created equal.
Damn.
I thought that man part was a figure of speech. And I thought all meant all. Okay, the second idea is much, much harder to talk to about. 7 years ago, I would never have admitted to you because I couldn't have
Gotta
admitted this to
sacrifice my
myself.
picture holder.
And this is the idea of natural order. The idea that by nature, some people are more worthy, more capable, more fit to lead, and other people are more dangerous, less ambitious, more criminal, less human. And these ideas have a lot to do with race. I know now that natural order is an antiquated idea, and unfortunately I can tell you that it still lives quite actively in my psyche. How did this happen? Well, for instance, everywhere I went, I saw that white men were in charge. And here's where the two ideas interlock. If I think the playing field is level, and I'm repeatedly exposed to images of white men at the top of organizational hierarchies, that sends me a powerful message that white men are superior. That's why they're in charge. Again, we're talking about fleeting moments, phrases that contribute to huge ideas about inherent human difference, huge ideas about social order, social roles, who leads and who follows, who serves and who gets served. Part of the reason these ideas were able to take hold so deeply was because I had no other narratives in my white bubble. I didn't know people with different experiences who probably would have had very different interpretations of all these slides that we're looking at. I so wish someone had helped me explained this to me earlier, because without understanding my own inner workings, I ended up spending most of my adult life using my ideas about a level playing field and natural order to reaffirm my ideas about a level playing field and natural order. As a young, I guess I was in my 20s, a job brought me into downtown Boston neighborhoods where there were dilapidated buildings and falling apart schools, and invariably these neighborhoods were full of black and brown people. You know these neighborhoods. This is the kind of neighborhood where Michael Brown and Freddie Gray lived and died. And I couldn't bear that this counted for normal for the children in these neighborhoods. So I wanted to do something about it. I came up with a plan. Interestingly, I didn't spend a lot of time talking to the actual people in the actual neighborhoods, because my belief system had already told me that I had little to learn from inferior people about their own circumstances. I mean, in hindsight, it is preposterous, but, you know, I was trapped in my own paradigm, and I didn't know yet that there was an incredibly different explanation for what I was seeing. So I raised money from my white social network, and I created after-school programs and field trips for these disadvantaged children, and then I was really kind of confused when they weren't that appreciative. But that didn't stop me. Not then, and not later when I became a classroom teacher. My patronizing savior syndrome, looks a lot like Scarlett, came with me everywhere I went until the age of 48. So in the first hour of that fateful class, the white professor told us we'd be doing a deep dive into our own racial identity. And I remember looking around the room at my racially mixed cohort and thinking, well, what am I going to do? I didn't know what I didn't know. About halfway through the course, my belief system was just buckling under the weight of history and narratives that I'd never learned in school or through family stories. And then came the straw that just broke the camel's back. We're watching a film one night, and they were talking about the GI Bill. And I'm thinking, oh, I know the GI Bill, because my dad, he was in World War II, and he used to say that the GI Bill was a great example of how America took care of its own. Right, and he used that GI Bill to go to Harvard Law School for free, and yeah, my parents bought their first home with a GI Bill backed loan. Yeah, and all of a sudden the film starts talking about the fact that the GI Bill was not accessible to most of the 1 million black GIs who also laid down their lives in that war. Oh my God. I realized in that moment that racism was not just prejudice. Racism was the power to put prejudice into life-defining laws and policies. And here's how it worked, because racism is a smooth operator. It didn't say anywhere in that bill that black GIs need not apply. Here's how it worked. The federal, at least on the housing front, the Federal Housing Authority, FHA, at the time, assessed lending risk on 2 criteria. 1, the condition of a building. 2, the skin color of the residents. Written into FHA guidelines were these words: the presence of even 1 or 2 non-white families could undermine real estate values. So based on this government warning, private banks all across the country created color-coded maps. So a green town, like would be a Winchester, a white town, and green would designate best lending area. Those areas that I had been calling disadvantaged, thinking people didn't know how to help themselves, those had been outlined in red, designating hazardous lending area. Winchester was not randomly white. Winchester had been made white by intentionally obstructing black and brown people from buying homes there. Okay, so let's see, back to the idea of that American dream. So, would we say that education is a critical component of the American dream? And yet in America, most public education is funded by property tax, which is connected to property value, which is at least, and this is still true, connected in part to skin color, which creates wildly divergent educational opportunities along racial lines and produces results that look a lot like natural order. White people are awesome, and black and brown people, they're the problem, living off the government, angry, ungrateful, unmotivated. This is such a twisted story, because though I had never thought about it this way, I gotta say, my white family, we got white-only land grants, Social Security, citizenship status, GI Bill benefits, preferential public education, to name a few. And I think about the psychological impact of America's racial scheme on me, because with all those white perks came optimism, a sense of belonging, and the belief that I was safe at the hands of authority. I can't even imagine what the opposite of that feels like. No one alive today created racism. We didn't ask for it. We didn't create it. Yet there is an immense responsibility and opportunity for everyone today to evolve, to use that word, America beyond this archaic and inhumane people scheme. I've had more than a few people of color say to me, Debbie, you're wasting your time. White people know exactly how the system works. They deny it because it works for them. I know those people exist. I'll push them over there. Because I also meet white people every day who are more like me. Good intentions, bad information. Fortunately, not all people of color have given up on white people. This is my colleague, Dr. Eddie Moore, Jr. And in many ways, his childhood was a mirror image of mine because he grew up in one of those redlined neighborhoods where he was exposed to negative stereotypes about white people. He got out of that neighborhood, he got to college, where for the first time in his life he met real, live white people and learned that, yeah, there are some hateful white people. And yet there are a lot that just lack education. So Dr. Moore has dedicated his life to educating white people. Among all he's done, one of them is to create the White Privilege Conference, now in its 17th year. So what do we do? This is a huge problem. And yet, all racism begins and ends with individual thoughts, actions, feelings. And so this individual work to think about our own belief systems is a surprisingly crucial piece of moving beyond racism. So I thought what would be helpful would be to share with you 3 of my personal racial justice practices. The first is curiosity. I will always make snap judgments. This is part of being human, but I practice slowing down and asking myself questions like, whoa, why did I just think that thought? Or what's really going on here? Or whose perspective am I not hearing? Courage. You know, I spent most of my life just terrified, especially when it came to talking about race, terrified of saying something stupid, saying something offensive, rocking the boat, creating conflict, and then terrified that I wouldn't be able to handle the fallout if I did any of those things. I can tell you that courage begets courage. It gets easier. Tolerance. Okay, misused word in this business. Tolerance is not about me tolerating you, because wouldn't that be setting the bar like pathetically low? Tolerance for me is about me tolerating my own feelings of discomfort as I bumble along imperfectly, discovering new blind spots and feeling anger and grief and embarrassment, the very feelings I was taught to fear and avoid. So this is the thing about finding myself in the story of race. It hasn't just been about connecting to my own racial history. It's been about reconnecting to parts of my own humanity that I had to dumb down in order to not see or feel racism. Racism crushes human potential for all of us. And I believe we're all better off when we're all better off. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness for all, you know, that's still my North Star. For every American who can make the time to understand what's behind racial tension, I believe that we'll have an increased chance of pulling together as a nation and as a species. Thank you.
Yeah, she ain't had to go all the way back to motherfucking slavery and none of that shit. Shit, World War II. That was in the 40s. I mean, that was before goddamn the civil rights movement and shit. But still, like you say, man, motherfuckers fought in the goddamn war. We fought in the same damn war and came home and got none of the motherfucking benefits. Over 1 million soldiers couldn't get the same housing loans. And if they did get a decent loan, couldn't get out the fucking ghetto. Because nobody wouldn't sell them a home in certain areas. Like I said, slavery. You ain't gotta go that far back. I mean, even with the Voting Rights Act, that was just 1965. That, you know what I'm saying? And then when hell, even in my lifetime, Clinton with that fucking 3 strikes, bro, like, god damn. The 3 strikes and the war on drugs. Like, come on, bro. Really? Y'all can't fucking piece that shit together? 3 strikes, war on drugs, private prisons. Come on, bro. That's institutional slavery. Right back in your face. Like, blatantly in your face. 13th Amendment. Add all that shit up, man. What that shit mean? 13th Amendment. Private prisons. 3 strikes. And that shit all happened in the fucking 90s. This is a war on drugs. None of the people I subscribe to should have put out new videos by now.
The real challenge of big data ultimately comes down to the big. And for any individual,
$21.25. Been thinking about that year a lot lately. It's got special significance for me because that's the year when I will undergo what I've come to call anyway my second death, or the death of memory. I don't know if there's a real term out there for it or not. That's just what I've been calling it. But what that basically means is we're all going to die. We know this. It's inevitable. It's unfortunate. But someday in the future, long after that, somebody else is going to die. And that person will be the last person who ever had any actual memory of you. After this point, there'll be no memory that you ever existed. I mean, sure, there'll be photos and videos and now a whole social media footprint that no one will care about because nobody knows who you were. By the way, I got to the number 2125 by applying an average 80-year life expectancy to myself, and then I was asking myself, how old would a person need to be to really remember me, like for the rest of their lives? And I don't know what that number might be, but I came up with 10 because it's an easy round number. So then I applied an 80-year life expectancy to that person, subtract the 10 that they knew me, and that's how I got 2125. Now this estimate may be way off. There's a lot of variables involved. I might live way longer than that. I might get hit by a bus tomorrow. But life expectancy has been increasing for decades, and health technologies are increasing at an incredible rate, so much so that many believe that not only would that other person still be alive in 2125, but so could I. Rodney Kowalski, Jonathan Reiser, and Ashkerden asked, Can you do a video on life extension? When people talk about life extension, they generally fall into two camps, the immortalists and the hellspanners. Immortalists like Ray Kurzweil eventually want to merge humans with technology, to embrace transhumanism, to upload our consciousnesses into avatars and virtual simulated worlds. Hellspanners aren't all that interested in becoming cyborgs. They're more interested in just prolonging human life by finding a cure for aging. They see aging as a disease, just like any other disease. And for them, it's not so much about living forever as it is about living well for as long as possible. Now, I've already covered a lot of the immortalist ideas in other videos. I'll share those in a playlist you can watch right here. So for today, I'm going to focus on the Hellspanners and some of the technologies they're working on that you might be able to take advantage of yourself in the next couple of decades. Now, a lot of times people kind of bristle at the idea of living to be 100 years old because they imagine the last 20 years of their lives are going to be consumed with a plague of different age-related diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia and cancer and heart disease. We see the image of being imprisoned in a home somewhere, barely able to get out of bed, never seeing the outside world, just talking to ourselves out of sheer loneliness with only dogs to keep us company. Oh my God, that's my life right now. But what if you were as active at 90 as you were at 40? What if you were traveling the world at 100 years old?
This dude is saying like, I don't know. Oh, because when you died, nobody would ever fucking remember you. When the last person who has a real memory of you dies, your life will mean shit. Like, no. We still know who Da Vinci is. And we know about his life and his artwork like 600 years later. Like, nobody is alive today who personally has any memories of Da Vinci. You know? But we know who he is. Why? Because the artists live forever. We live forever. Yes. Yes, we will. You remember that. Artists live forever. And there's an old saying, if an artist falls in love with you, you will live forever. Because all they have to do is paint you one time. And then you will be the Mona Lisa. And everybody knows who the Mona Lisa is. 600 years later, we know. We know who the Mona Lisa is. Get some of this rose red. Ooh, rosy red. A little dollop of that.
Oh, what if you were playing softball with your great-great-grandkids at 120? What if age really was nothing but a number? You know, the argument that I always hear whenever people talk about immortality, living forever, or just radical life extension in general is that people feel like they would get bored with life after a while. And to them, I say, are you freaking kidding me? At our current level of knowledge, it would take 10 lifetimes to know everything there is to know and experience everything there is to experience. Hundreds of different cultures and languages out there to learn about. 7 billion people with 7 billion unique perspectives and life stories to discover. Not to even mention the advances that are coming down the pike in space travel and traveling around the cosmos and virtual worlds we can't even imagine right now. And you're afraid you're going to be bored? I'm sorry, but if you're bored with life, that's your problem. And guess what? You don't have to do the life extension stuff. You can check out whenever you want. I mean, seriously, are you going to argue that you want Alzheimer's? That you want cancer, dementia, arthritis? There's no legitimate argument against this. What about the fact that we run out of resources and nobody died? Except for that. Damn it. Okay, there are some downsides that we should talk about, although the overpopulation one I think is a little bit overblown because just because we've cured aging-related diseases doesn't mean nobody's going to die. Millions of people die of accidents every single year, and probability states that eventually that's going to catch up to you. And birth rates have been dropping for decades, and will continue to do so as quality of life increases, especially in the developing world. So it probably isn't going to be as bad as we think it is. Besides, not everybody will take the life extension treatment, and let's just be honest, not everybody will be able to afford it. Which is another downside. Our society is already stratified too much as it is. radical life extension that only wealthy people can afford would just make it worse. There's also the argument that in a world where people are working way past 100 or even 150 years old would make it really hard for younger people to get into the job market. As if that wasn't bad enough already. So there are some things to work out, but just think about what the most brilliant people in the world could do with an unlimited lifespan. How many more discoveries could Einstein have made? How many more masterpieces could Shakespeare have written? How many more insults could Don Rickles have thrown? Plus, think about how badass retirement accounts could be. You could set up a modest index fund account in your mid-20s and retire a multi-millionaire at 150 years old. Now, this is all pie-in-the-sky stuff that could be possible if we cured aging, but here's the thing. It's still a big if. Believe it or not, there's still not a clear, widely accepted explanation for why we age. And it's an incredibly hard problem to solve because it occurs at different rates and different scales across different functions of our body. For example, the heart ages at a different rate than the brain. Also, the foundational causes of aging go all the way down into the cellular and even molecular level. So we're talking about repairing and replacing whole organs while simultaneously switching on and off proteins and enzymes at the genetic level. Now, we've known for a while now that aging is tied into metabolism in some way, because when you look at the animal kingdom, the animals that have the highest metabolisms have the shortest lifespans, and vice versa. So that leads us into our first kind of life extension technique, caloric restriction. Caloric restriction, or dietary restriction, is a regimen where people eat at least 30% fewer calories than normal and then supplement with vitamin supplements to make sure they get all the nutrition that they need. But they believe that this works by putting your body into a fasting state. The theory is that when your body's in a fasting state, it focuses its energy on tissue repair, so you get less tissue damage and a longer lifespan. Experiments with caloric restriction in mice showed an up to 45% longer lifespan, and they found similar results in experiments with rhesus monkeys. This, of course, begs the question, is a longer life worth living if you're only eating like a POW the entire time? For many people, the answer is no. But studies have started showing similar results from intermittent fasting. Now, there are different types of intermittent fasting. One of them involves not really eating anything until the late afternoon, so you're kind of fasting throughout a big part of your day. The actor Terry Crews actually is a big proponent of this. Now, this has some noted benefits, but the type of fasting that we're going to talk about is the kind where you actually go about 5 days out of every month without eating. This does not sound fun, but it is only 1 week a month. It's only 1 week a month. But studies tend to show that this puts your body into extreme tissue repair and can even help prevent cancer. So the cancer thing is actually pretty interesting because the theory goes that when you fast for that long, your body goes into ketosis. Ketosis is when the body pulls energy out of your fat cells. Your cells get energy from a substance called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and normally it gets ATP by converting glucose into ATP, glucose coming from the food that you eat. But energy that's stored in your fat cells is not in the form of glucose, it's in the form of ketones. So your cells are able to convert ketones into ATP to get energy that way, but there's a certain type of cell that can't do that. Cancer cells. So the theory is that if you intermittent fast from time to time, 5 days at a time, it's long enough to starve out those cancer cells that you might have in your body before they can form tumors. Now this is really cool, but it's also an oversimplification. There are hundreds of different types of cancers out there. Some of them respond differently to this, and it's also a really extreme thing to do to your body. So if you want to do something like this, definitely talk to a doctor first. So the first strategy is don't eat. The second strategy, don't breathe. One of the things that causes the most metabolic wear and tear on your cells is oxidative stress. Life on this planet has a really weird relationship with oxygen. Do you realize that for the first half of the history of planet Earth, all life was single-celled, and this single-celled life got their energy without oxygen, something called anaerobic metabolism. Life was stuck at this stage for over 2 billion years before it figured out oxidation, which incorporates oxygen into the production of ATP, which is a much more efficient form of energy production. Like, insanely more efficient. It's like the difference between a match and an acetylene torch. Aerobic life reproduced faster, spread further, and had enough excess energy to become multicellular. Now this is a very, very big deal. When we talk about the great filters life has to go through to gain intelligence, the first one, becoming multicellular, might be the biggest. It might be exceedingly rare. And oxidative energy is the process that makes that possible. But this acetylene torch burns hot and fast, and eventually wears down the cell by bombarding it with free radicals, which are ions, basically atoms with unpaired electrons that can do damage to other molecules in the cells, including DNA. So the very element that makes our lives possible is the element that ensures our death. Oxygen. Can't live with it, can't live without it. Luckily, there are antioxidants, which bind to these free radicals and prevents them from damaging the cell. just in case you ever wondered what all the antioxidant buzz was all about. Now, antioxidant supplementation has shown to reduce the risk of some age-related diseases, but it doesn't really do much about the aging process. It doesn't really increase lifespan. So, good stuff, but not the droids we're looking for. Now, a lot of research in the last couple of decades is focused on telomeres. So imagine that this shoelace is a chromosome. And this aglet at the end that holds the shoelace together, and yeah, these are called aglets. No idea how I know that. These would be the telomeres, and they serve the same function. They keep the chromosome from unwinding and unraveling at the ends. Well, scientists discovered that these telomeres, these chromosomal aglets, actually get a little bit shorter every time your cell reproduces, which means over time they get shorter and shorter to the point that they stop to function and your DNA, your chromosomes, start to get frayed and unravel a little bit. These lead to the cells becoming damaged enough to stop reproducing, which is also known as the Hayflick limit. But they also discovered an enzyme that's created in cells that reproduce really often, like skin cells and stem cells, called telomerase, that actually lengthens and prevents the shortening of these telomeres, meaning the cells and tissues last much longer before they hit the Hayflick limit. This was a big deal and actually won the Nobel Prize in 2009 for physiology or medicine. So there are now a whole slew of books and studies on how we can increase our telomere production in our cells, and one particular product called TA65 is showing a lot of promise in doing that, and there are some studies and information about that down in the description below. But the drug that's really got everybody talking these days is metformin. Metformin's a drug that's been prescribed since the 1950s for diabetes, so it's nothing new, but over the decades, researchers started to notice some things. Patients who took metformin were living longer and having fewer aging-related diseases. And one study actually found that they were not only living longer than diabetic patients who were not taking metformin, they were living longer than non-diabetic people as well. Interestingly, it's a derivative of a plant called goat's rue, which was used in the medieval times for frequent urination, which is a symptom of diabetes. So what metformin does is it tells your pancreas to make less insulin by disrupting the oxidative process. And remember what I was saying earlier about calorie-restricted diets giving a signal to cells to go into a starvation mode? Well, the signal that your body gives to those cells, it comes in the form of insulin. Now, obviously, this is helpful for diabetics, but it also sort of mimics the calorie restriction diet without having to eat like a POW. Even the cancer-fighting aspects. Some of the great things about metformin is that it's cheap. It only costs 5 cents to make, and it's been around so long that nobody owns a patent on it anymore, which means anybody can make it. But that's also a downside, because there's still a lot of research that needs to be done. That research costs money, and people don't really invest in things when there's no way for them to make a lot of money on that investment. And there needs to be very extensive research done, because what they're trying to do is get the FDA to approve metformin as an anti-aging pill. And that's something they've never done before. Up until only recently, age-related research was considered almost on the fringe of medical science. Aging was considered something that was inevitable, that you couldn't treat, that it was a foregone conclusion, you couldn't do anything about it. So the medicines and the regulations around them focused on treating age-related conditions, but not aging itself. If the FDA approves metformin, they are basically saying that aging is a disease that can be treated. This is a massive shift in perception. This would take aging research out of the fringe and into the mainstream. And should metformin get passed and approved, insurance companies probably would line up to cover it because it's cheap for one thing, and it prevents really expensive diseases that they would have to pay for. People living to be 120 years old might be commonplace. So that would push my date of second death to 2205. Good show, old chap. Now that's pretty good, but it's still more of a treatment for aging-related diseases. It's still not increasing lifespan, it's just increasing health span. And that's fantastic, but even as more and more people are living past 100, record numbers of people, they still tend to drop right around 120. 120 seems to be the max lifespan for a human being. We just can't seem to get past that. But there is a guy who thinks that we could beat that. His name is Aubrey de Grey. You really can't talk about anti-aging research without mentioning Aubrey de Grey. He's the head scientist and founder of the SENS Research Foundation. He's eccentric, to say the least, but he's also a huge anti-aging advocate and makes some really compelling points. Seriously, just do a search on YouTube. He's done like 1 million TED Talks. The team at the SENS Research has pinpointed 7 different categories of cellular damage that leads to aging, and they set about trying to fix them one at a time. And they are cell loss and tissue atrophy, cancerous cells, mitochondrial mutations, death-resistant cells, extracellular matrix stiffening, extracellular aggregates, and intracellular aggregates. And the exciting thing is that these strategies are based on technologies that already exist. This isn't some woo-woo sci-fi word salad. These are metabolic processes we currently understand and know how to fix right now. SENS also advocates treating the human body like a car that can be maintained by just repairing organs that have worn out over time. Luckily, what science can do is they can take some of your cells and clone you, and then implant that cloned embryo into a surrogate mother, and when that clone is born, it's given this life in this bubble where they have everything they want, they live their lives in peace and harmony until you need one of their organs, and then they murder that clone, and then, wait. No, that's the movie The Island. What they can do is take your regular cells and turn them into pluripotent stem cells. And then those stem cells can be triggered to turn into any type of cell that you need. Those cells could then become organs that you could transplant into yourself when you need them. Some scientists are working on 3D printing organs by laying stem cells onto a lattice and then making an organ out of that. We're pretty far away from that. But there are stem cell therapies where they insert stem cells into damaged tissue where they then proliferate and become a part of that organ, basically introducing brand new young cells into the organ and revitalizing it that way. And this has shown a lot of promise. But the true life extension technology is nanobots. Swarms of cell-sized nanobots that can be programmed to go through our body and repair tissue, reconnect neurons, clean out our arteries, repair tissue damage. That is the ultimate life extension. Imagine just a little army of sentinels throughout your body that can respond whenever you have a health checkup to just go fix whatever problem. Maybe you could even control it on an app. Seems pretty far-fetched, but nanobots are already a thing. A team of researchers at Durham University in England have created tiny nanobots 1/50th the size of a human hair that can be programmed to seek out and attach themselves to cancer cells. And then once that it gets blasted with some kind of light or radiation, it spins a molecular gear in that nanobot that drills down into the cancer cell and kills it. Right now they're testing these out on fish. They soon will be testing them on mice. Hopefully in a few years they'll be tested in humans as well. Life extension technologies are kind of having a moment right now. Millions of dollars are flooding into this research from billionaires and foundations around the world who are starting to ask the question, is it really weird and unnatural to cure aging? I mean, it used to be natural that you would die of smallpox. It was natural to get a cut and die from an infection from that. One example of Silicon Valley's involvement in this research is Google's new anti-aging company, Calico. Now, they've been extremely secretive. Nobody really knows what they're working on, but they do have $1.2 billion in the bank, and Google. So maybe they're just spinning their wheels, or maybe they're breaking new ground, and we'll find out about it in a few years. Interesting times. Now, I've made no secret of the fact that I don't want to die. But more than that, I want to be able to live without fear of dying, you know? I want to live and experience and enjoy this thing, and the longer I can do that, the better. Now, this is a huge topic. There's a lot that I left out. You guys can feel free to talk about things maybe that I missed in the comments or didn't talk about in the comments. And there's also a lot of links down in the description of things that I didn't have time to talk about here. Tons of information. Go check all that out and read it for yourselves. But I want to hear how excited you are about this kind of stuff. Which one of these technologies sounds most reasonable to you? Which ones do you think hold the most promise? Which ones are you lined up for? Are you interested in it at all? Discuss downstairs. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you enjoyed this shirt and would like one of your own, you can go to answerswithjoe.com/shirt. This is just one of dozens of really cool and fun designs that we have there. So you can check it out. You can get a cool shirt, and it helps support the channel. A big special thanks to the Answer Files on Patreon who help support this channel. We have a lot of new people I want to read out really quickly. I'm going to go through as fast as I can. There's Dimitri J, D. Rudley, or Drudley, Craig Lewis, Fleming, Shannon Jones, Johnny Golder, 10X Labs, Andre Blankrome, Jeff Harris, Jack Strang, Chris Davis, Charlie Livingston, Michael Tilley, Andrew Yoder, and Jordan Wegman, and Ewan Smith. Wow, so many new people. Thank you guys so much for joining. If you would like to join them, get access to secret perks and things that nobody else gets access to, you can go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe. And as usual, this video is supported by cankerboy.com. If you get regular mouth ulcers or canker sores, the pain, it sucks. This is a pill you can take every day, helps prevent them. It is magic. Just go to cankerboy.com. There's a 2-month risk-free trial. All right, like and share if you liked it. And if this is your first time here, please check out some of these other videos. There should be one right in here somewhere for you to see what else I got going on. And if you like any of those, please hit subscribe. I come back with videos just like this every Monday. All right, you guys know what I'm going to say here. Thanks so much for watching. You guys have an eye-opening week, and I will see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.
Liberty, liberty, liberty.
In my first two videos on the topic of the lost city of Atlantis, I connected the dots on more than a dozen similarities between Plato's description of Atlantis to that of the Rikat structure, which is commonly referred to as the Eye of the Sahara and is located in a remote region of northwest Africa in the country of Mauritania. And my argument in those videos was that these similarities are so numerous and so precise that the Rikat structure should be considered as the most likely location for this lost ancient civilization. However, nothing is certain, and it is undoubtedly the subject of much debate. But if after watching those first two videos you still doubted the possibility that the Rikat structure could be the location of Atlantis, well, in this video, I'm going to share with you some new details that I just came across that makes the case that the Eye of Africa is not just the most likely location of Atlantis, but the connection of these added details I'm about to share makes this case so compelling that it's practically definitive. So let me jump right into these details, and afterwards I'll connect the dots on everything so we can see exactly what we're dealing with here. Like I stated in my first video, the legend of Atlantis originates from the ancient Egyptians, and the Greek lawmaker Solon recorded this information while visiting Egypt some 2,600 years ago. And the information was passed down through 6 generations to Plato, who published the account of Atlantis in the Timaeus and Critias dialogues some 2,400 years ago, and is apparently the only reason why we know about the legend of Atlantis today. Plato stated that the king of the capital of Atlantis was named Atlas, who was the firstborn son of Poseidon, and of course, like I mentioned before, Poseidon had 10 children through 5 sets of twins, and each one of those 10 children went on to rule each of those 10 kingdoms that made up the empire of Atlantis. Now, remember the name Atlas and hold that thought for a moment as I share something else that will connect the dots on this new information. There is a group of people that used to be referred to as the Maori. However, in modern times, they are now known as the Berber people, which inhabit a region of northwest Africa. A region once referred to as Mori, but now known as Maghreb, which essentially makes up modern-day Numidia, Morocco, West Algeria, and Mauritania. In fact, the name Mauritania comes from the Maori people. Now, does anyone happen to know the name of who was said to be the first king of Mauritania? Well, it was someone who just so happened to be named Atlas, the legendary king of the Maori people. What a coincidence. But of course, there can be no possible connection to Atlas, the king of Atlantis, because after all, there is simply no way that Atlantis could ever have been in the remote region of northwest Africa. Now hold that thought for a moment too, as I share something else with you that you've likely never seen or heard of before. There was an ancient Greek man named Herodotus who lived some 2,500 years ago, who you may be familiar with as being known as the father of history, made famous for his documentation of the Greco-Persian Wars. Herodotus was born nearly 75 years after Solon had died, and again, Solon was the person who documented the story of Atlantis from the ancient Egyptians. Herodotus himself also died when Plato was just 2 years old, so he never knew either of them, and subsequently died many years before Plato had ever published the account of Atlantis. One of Herodotus' notable achievements was developing what was then the most accurate mapping of the known inhabited world at the time of 450 BC. First, let's orient ourselves here. We can clearly see Italy, the Mediterranean Sea, the countries that surround it, the Caspian Sea, the Red Sea, the Nile Delta, to name a few notable features. And let me transition to a different version of the map so we can see things more clearly, but if you look to the left, what do you see there? That's right, the word Atlantis, which is shown to be located south of the Pillars of Hercules, or the Strait of Gibraltar, and positioned in northwest Africa. Let me first say that I do not know how or why Herodotus came to this conclusion, as this is something that I need to research more, but I look forward to any insight that people will be sharing in the comments related to his development of this map and why he claimed that Atlantis was in that specific location. You'll also notice on this map the detailing of a mountain chain just south of the Strait of Gibraltar, known today as the Atlas Mountains, which are also known to be home of the Berber people, which I mentioned earlier. And these mountains were in fact named after Atlas, the first king of Mauritania. You know, something else that's interesting to point out, when you research Atlas, the king of Mauritania, there seems to be no connection to Atlantis. I assume that this is related to the fact that nobody has ever considered that the location of Atlantis could be hiding in plain sight in the Western Sahara Desert in what is now Mauritania. Let me take a quick moment to thank John for leaving this outstanding comment, which brought the information of the first king of Mauritania as well as Herodotus' map to my attention, something that I was otherwise unaware of, and I suspect that goes to most everyone else watching this video. So let me clarify where we're at right now. There is a 2,500-year-old map that annotates the location of Atlantis in Northwest Africa, seemingly in the exact location of the Riqat structure. And this map was created by the so-called Father of History, a trusted source of documentation praised by modern-day historians for his ability to systematically document information in vivid detail. Then we have this mysterious and incredibly unique structure in Mauritania known as the Riqat. This structure just so happens to be made of concentric circles, just as Plato had stated. But not only that, it consists of the precise amount of rings, 3 that would be of water and 2 of land. And on top of that, it just so happens to be the precise size of how Atlantis was described, measuring 23.5 kilometers or 14.5 miles across when computed in modern day measurements. It also has an opening to the south that would match Atlantis' description of connecting to the sea, and in fact, its very appearance today seems to suggest that it did. It has mountains to the north, and not only that, the mountains to the north contained rivers. The entire area surrounding the Riqat is a large level plain. The sides of Atlantis were said to be steep towards the side of the sea, and the Adra Highlands located in this area have a steep 1,500-foot drop from cliffside to its base. Even more significantly, the center island of the Riqat produces fresh spring water, just as Plato specified, and this is despite the wells in the surrounding area producing exclusively salt water, which also is further evidence that this site was once under the ocean. The area around the Riqat has an abundance of black, red, and white color stone. And Atlantis was said to have an abundance of elephants, which elephants exist in Mauritania today, and depictions of elephants can be seen in cave art close to the Riqat structure. There are even relics including pottery shards, arrowheads, and other evidence that a civilization once lived there, yet archaeologists have no idea what civilization they belong to or when. And all of this is in Mauritania, where people who were once known as the Maury people were led by a legendary king whose name was Atlas, the same exact name as the king of Atlantis. But on top of all of this, it just so happens to be in the exact location that is annotated on an ancient map that was created by who we refer to as the Father of History. I mean, this is an X marks the spot if there ever was one, especially...
Liberty Mutual lets you only pay for what you need, which saves you money. Studies show you like money.
When you consider the nature of the many precise similarities between the Riqat structure and Plato's description of Atlantis. Now for me, this is more than compelling. This is Atlantis. Despite the fact that yes, this site today is nearly 1,300 feet above sea level. Because the scientific explanation for the Riqat's creation would make sense for it to be Atlantis when you simply compare it to what Plato had stated about Atlantis' destruction, describing how an earthquake caused Atlantis to sink into the depths of the ocean. Perhaps that earthquake was the Riqat itself. For example, scientists believe it went through multiple processes of being lifted up and down as its subsurface dome collapsed and later lifted again. A process that was repeated multiple times and creating the concentric circles that we see today. I mean, geologists literally describe it as a dome, so the subsurface dome collapsed, Atlantis sank, also explaining the earthquake. I mean, this seems fitting, especially when we acknowledge all of the matching precise similarities to what Plato had said, such as the concentric circles, specifically 3 of water and 2 of land, its precise size, and everything else. It certainly seems definitive to me as this far exceeds coincidence. And you know, that reminds me, I received a comment from someone claiming to live in Mauritania and going on to mention that locals have seen various fish skeletons in the Riqat following rainstorms. If this is true, I might be willing to pay as much as $1,000 for evidence of that. If it can be video recorded in such a way that any viewer would see and know that the evidence was not planted, and if the video included detailed panorama shots of the Riqat, plus video of the GPS location, etc., If this is true, well, I can't help but think that the significant difference in value between US dollars and the currency of Mauritania, well, perhaps even just a few hundred US dollars would make it more than worth it to go out there and take pictures of any evidence that can be found. Seashells, whatever, but I'll get back to that in just a moment. First, let me also mention that there is evidence that this region was under the ocean far more recently than the tens of millions of years that some people claim, as non-fossilized whale bones have been found in the desert of Mauritania. And this example you're seeing here should not be confused with a different discovery in the Egyptian desert of actual fossils of whale bones. And you can clearly see the difference for yourself, as fossils are essentially bones that over millions of years became stone. So, if scientists claim that it takes more than 1 million years for bones to become fossils, why are there non-fossilized whale bones in the desert of Mauritania? But getting back to my potential offer to pay to see evidence of sea life at the Ricotte, I received a number of outstanding comments of people that searched the Ricotte structure through Google Earth and provided the coordinates to some very interesting satellite images of potential structures on the ground. What are these? Were these made in modern times? Here you can see various satellite photos of these structures followed by a zoomed out view so you can see where they were taken in relation to the Ricotte. But look at this one located in the center island of the Ricotte. It almost looks like the outline of a castle or something. Perhaps there is a simple explanation for it, but I might be willing to pay several hundred US dollars just to see a photo of what this looks like from the ground. It cannot be overstated just how remote this site is and how little it is visited. This is not a tourist attraction. This thing is in the middle of nowhere, and this is just another example of why the Ricotte needs to be studied from the ground and excavated. And getting back to Herodotus's map, I mean, were you even aware of a 2,500-year-old map showing the location of Atlantis in Northwest Africa? I mean, I'm sure some people have heard of it, but I went ahead and did a word scan through my YouTube creator dashboard of all the comments I've received in my 2 prior videos on Atlantis. And it appears that only 4 people mentioned this map. Just 4 out of nearly 25,000 comments between my 2 previous videos on Atlantis. In other words, it's fair to say that pretty much nobody has heard of this. And it's also worth pointing out that this map shows the Nile River going from east to west, as various legends have long stated. And you know, this reminds me of a detail I pointed out in my previous video involving the recent land survey of Mauritania that identified a massive river that once ran through it. It seems to me that this river may have been the Nile, a possibility that hopefully scientists will research more in the future. But of course, many people rule out the possibility of the Eye of the Sahara being a possible location of Atlantis due to its current elevation above sea level, and I understand where people are coming from, but it really is time that we start asking new questions about what's geologically possible on this planet over a certain length of time in regards to land movement. It's right here in our faces, guys, and this discovery provides us with such a huge opportunity to not only learn about a lost civilization, but learn about the workings of planet Earth as well. We cannot assume that we know all there is to know. Now, let me take a moment to address a couple points of discussion that came up following my previous Atlantis videos. For instance, I used the example of floodmap.net to paint a picture for the viewer of how the Ricotte structure could be a feasible location and design for Atlantis if the area was at sea level some 12,000 years ago. Many people commented stating that if this were the case, Egypt would have to be under the ocean as well, but I'm suggesting that a region of the Western Sahara was lifted. I am not suggesting that the ocean was some 1,500 feet higher. And since there is no landrise.net, the floodmap.net comparison was just what I said it was in that video, to paint you a picture of what the Ricotte and surrounding area would look like if it ever was at sea level. Another point I want to bring up is in regards to my Antarctica comparison in relation to the speed at which land can rise over a period of time. Some have pointed out that the article I used stated that Antarctica is rising because the land is being lifted back up as the ice melts, causing something like a sponge effect, and those are my own words, by the way, of the rising of the land with the reduced weight of the lost ice. But there is more to this, and the article specifically mentions it being pushed up by the flowing mantle beneath. Like I said in my prior video, I used this comparison to simply point out that it is possible for land to rise at a certain speed over a certain period of time. However, the Ricotte is a volcanic anomaly, and that's what volcanic activity does. It raises the ground. I think that most people understood what I was saying, but the skeptics jumped on this, and I would just like to encourage people to think for themselves, because that same article mentioned not one single word about volcanoes underneath Antarctica. Yet we know that there are at least 91 volcanoes underneath its ice, although scientists have not confirmed if those volcanoes are active or not. But surely some of them are, considering that there are at least 400 subglacial lakes underneath that ice. Obviously, something is melting it to create those lakes that are underneath as much as 2 miles of ice. And it seems to me that the Antarctica land rise is related to that volcanic activity. Not because there's less ice and the land is rising like a sponge or something, but that point is irrelevant because going back to the RECOT, they haven't even drilled it. This illustration you see here is just that, an educated guess as to what's happened underneath. And apparently many scientists who have speculated about the RECOT have never actually visited the site in person, so keep that in mind. So to close this video trilogy on the topic of Atlantis and the RECOT structure, let me just say that I have not discovered anything. I only discovered a little-known documentary on the topic of Atlantis, and I am simply sharing that information with as many people as I possibly can. And that is the purpose of this channel. I have no desire to have something published in some scientific journal. That's for other nerds. I'm a different type of nerd. And nerd is a term of endearment, by the way, for me. My desire is to share information that I find interesting or important with the masses, and I will be discussing many different topics on this channel. And in the future, I will even be remaking certain videos I have now that already have millions of views, as I'm trying to build the quality of this channel, and some of those videos, just the presentation, various inaccuracies in the information, the editing, there's just a lot of room for improvement, so look forward to that. And keep in mind, I do 100% of this myself, and I'm learning as I go as far as my editing skills, as well as just my delivery in front of the camera. And that reminds me, I will also be making a video in the future to talk more about me and who I am and what brought me on this journey to making YouTube videos. So look forward to that. But like I've said before, this is just the beginning of this channel. There is so much to be shared with the masses that far exceeds the topic of ancient civilization. That's just one thing. Humanity is starting various truths, and I am going to accelerate that awakening. And I'm going to make some real noise while doing it. Mark my words. But I'll leave it at that. I'm Jimmy. This is Bright Insight. Like and subscribe and leave me a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on all of this involving Atlantis and the RECOT structure. But to me, this is just so compelling that this requires excavation at this point. So I'll just leave it at that. I have a new video coming out around this time next week, so look forward to that. But take care, everybody. What's that? This right there?
I don't know. They some motherfuckers say that they could have the location of that shit. Some people say Atlantis was in Greece, and this motherfucker keeps saying that shit is in Africa. Trash truck outside.
Some of the most interesting aspects of the cosmos, including incredible
Beat sensitivity pain fast with Sensodyne Rapid Relief.
Have you ever tried to imagine the far future? Even though we live in an age defined by our technology, humanity seems poised to boldly continue to march into a new world of far future technologies. Coming are the days of orbital rings, Dyson swarms, and molecular nanotechnology. Futurism provides us glimpses of these future technologies and what we might do with them. Through advancing technology, we will colonize other worlds and improve life on this one. Perhaps the most interesting question of all to ask is, will you be around to...
City of Knowledge? Well, I don't know. This guy says that there's a tribe from Africa who says that their ancestors, the person who founded their civilization name was Atlas. And that Atlantis literally means the land of Atlas. Atland. Atlas land. Atlas's land. Atlantis. But was it a city of knowledge? That's the whole legend behind it. That's where it was a civilization that is as advanced as we are right now. But it fell to some kind of natural cataclysm, some type of catastrophe where it may have been a large meteorite, something equivalent to what took out the dinosaurs. Some kind of extinction level event actually happened again, and it erased all of human society to where there was just a small few pockets of people clinging on to fucking life and trying to rebuild. But Atlantis is believed to be the founder of what we know and consider to be knowledge and civilization. So that shit, I mean, when the first time I understood Atlantis or tried to understand Atlantis, that shit just seems crazy as fuck. And it comes from this story that we have from one dude, Plato, from so many hundreds of years ago. He tells a story of not firsthand eyewitness accounts, but of a story that his grandfather or his great uncle or somebody told to him about this place that his uncle never went to. It's just his uncle heard it as a story because it was so long afterwards. So his uncle went to Africa, and the Africans told his uncle this fucking grand story about this marvelous, spectacular civilization of the old world where all knowledge and understanding came from, that was destroyed, and that the founders of the Egyptian culture were the remnants of Atlantis, and the last ones who understood the gods, who were able to speak to the gods. And so they told Herodotus this story. Oh no, not Herodotus, but what was his uncle's name? Anyway. And then he goes back to fucking Greece, and recounts this story that he heard from the Africans.
and it makes its way to Plato. And when Plato starts to write, he writes down this story that he remembers being told as a kid, and explaining the location of the city, or where people thought the city was located, and its dimensions, and how the city looked and how it was structured, and about the inhabitants of the city of Atlantis. So for a long time, people thought it was a myth, and it's like, oh, it's just some bullshit ass fairy tale story. And then some people think it's like totally legit, because once again, even some archaeologists are starting to believe that the dynastic Egyptians were not the pyramid builders. They did not construct these massive edifices and obelisks and these giant structures of renown. They were inheritant to these places. So there's a lot of questioning that goes on in our deep, deep, deep antiquity, yo. And I'm utterly fascinated with it. Like, I'm a big history buff. Why you talk about slavery? Because I like history. I need a better understanding of who the fuck did what and why. And then you start looking at older kingdoms like the Aztecs and the people from Easter Island. And then you start realizing that there's even older civilizations like the Egyptians and the Sumerians. And then you realize there's even older civilizations, and they're like, it's so old we don't even know who these motherfuckers were. Who were the inhabitants of Petra, and who were the people who built the temples at Baalbek. Like, who were these motherfuckers? Were these the Atlanteans that were able to survive the cataclysm, or nobody really knows. And that's the fun part. Chasing down this mystery. Jinkies. Come on, Shaggy. Let's figure out this mystery.
See it unfold. If things like life extension biotechnology continue to head in the direction that they currently are, it could be that people alive today may still be alive centuries or more from now. Or perhaps we'll merge with our technology, in some way making ourselves technologically nearly immortal. Though it must be noted that even with the most advanced far future technologies, there must always come a time when existence must come to an end. What technology cannot defeat is the aging of the universe itself.
Welcome to Event Horizon with John Michael Godier. Joining John today is longtime friend Isaac Arthur, host of Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur on YouTube. A physicist and futurist, Isaac explores the possibilities of the future of humanity on his channel, and also speculative looks at what alien civilizations might be like, science fiction, and of course, explorations of the solutions to the Fermi paradox.
Isaac Arthur, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on, John.
It's my pleasure, man. We've been interacting for a long time on YouTube, and it just seemed like this would be the perfect interview for October. Now, Isaac, we both started in a similar way, accidentally, on YouTube. We uploaded videos that we thought might get a certain amount of views, people we know, and then all of a sudden they go crazy. In my case, that was Gilbert Tabby Star, which has since, become a not so interesting story. But back then in 2016, it was huge. And yours was the idea of megastructures. What could be built in the far, far future, or what aliens might even build? Out of the things you talk about, the megastructures, what is the least likely for us to see? I know a lot of people talk about Dyson spheres, and I don't know that those are feasible. What's your view?
Well, I think the classic Dyson sphere, the solid one, that's probably fairly unlikely, except maybe as a very thin solar collector, nobody living on it. The Dyson swarm itself is really more just an expansion concept of many different megastructures all orbiting around the same star. And that one to me seems almost like an inevitable thing that's going to happen. In terms of the least, the thing is, we say the least likely ever be built, something like a hoop ward or donut ward, you'd say, well, why would you ever build that? But kind of societies that build things like that, the weirder it is, the more likely it is someone will do it at least once. So, you might be billions of these habitats or structures, but you still have that one that was built as a platter or as a donut or built as a cube. And so I think you would see some pretty strange ones get built eventually, but the ones that I think you see the most, of course, are the rotating habitats, your neocylinders or bigger.
So rotating habitats, essentially creating eventually a Dyson swarm where you have, many habitats and maybe energy collectors and things like that. And that it might be detectable from a distance if you were looking for, SETI.
I usually say the analogy to make on a Dyson swarm is not to think of it as a megastructure itself, but more like a city full of buildings. And those buildings are going to change over time, in many different forms, but the city is, pretty much a constant of itself, and that's what the swarm is more like.
Right, so if you have a civilization that lasts for billions of years, they're constantly evolving. Dyson swarm is going to be, that would actually be a technosignature. It in itself would be a changing profile based on something that could only be technological, I would imagine. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. I think it's a lot like taking a photograph of a continent from orbit. It's going to change over time, but the basic format stays more or less the same-ish. So you'll be able to spot it. You're never going to miss that continent, but the specific layout isn't going to look the same 1,000 years after people first, live there. Who knows what the place is going to look like 10,000 years later. But the general notion is they're using up all that energy, or they're using all that space because they want to stay close enough for communications. And even if you're not using a star, you're still going to end up in something that looks a lot like a Dyson sphere in terms of its waste heat, because you can't get any closer than that, or you start basically evaporating away under your own waste heat. So you'd still end up with one that might be a different size, though.
You know, a lot of these ideas, like the Dyson swarm, actually the Dyson sphere is a very old idea. I think that goes back to Olaf Stapledon in the 30s.
Starmaker, I think it was, isn't it?
Yeah, but the actual Dyson swarm, which is Freeman Dyson had conceived it, is a 1960s idea. And so are things like the Kardashev scale, or even searching for SETI beacons. So do you think, because we're still essentially functioning in SETI on ideas from the 1960s, do you think these are actually out of date now, and that the reason we don't see a Kardashev Type 3 civilization is because civilizations don't pursue that level of development? Or do you think do you think the ideas in which we base all this, are they outdated?
I mean, to a degree. You know, obviously, we have to change our perspective as we get new technologies and insights, but the Kardashev scale and the Dyson swarm are very basic concepts in of themselves. It's the idea is that you want to make use of your sun, or its mass at the very least, and that a civilization is going to grow until it pretty much maxes one out. Where the Kardashev scale is concerned, that's really just assuming the same thing, that you're going to max out your area and that you'll produce waste heat. So they could be wrong, but for them to be wrong, it pretty much requires there to be something wrong with thermodynamics as a basic concept. And, you know, there could be somebody finds a way to grab energy on the cheap from dark energy, and so they just go set up shop where they want, or someone figures out how to warp space-time Doctor Who style, and everybody lives inside a box that's 1 meter across on the outside, but the size of a universe on the inside, you know?
In which case, you could make the case that the one solution to the Fermi paradox is that we're simply looking in the wrong place, because we tend to point radio telescopes at star systems and things like that because it's convenient. But in fact, an alien civilization may abandon a star system and function on some other completely different model out in deep space.
Oh, sure, yeah. You know, the key thing with SETI, it makes sense to do the radio signals approach first, because you're going for the low-hanging fruit. You know, if you're looking for a civilization, the easiest thing to do is look for them talking to you. The next most obvious way is say, well, if we're such a civilization, what are we doing that's going to be really obvious to an outside looker? And that would be, you know, the infrared waste heat of the civilization. If those assumptions are wrong, then, you know, you obviously keep expanding your search. But at the same time, you know, to make a useful search, you have to have certain parameters, and we have to use the core laws of physics for that. So if thermodynamics gets tossed out in another century, then we'll have to, you know, change a lot of things, and the SETI search will be the least important of those. But the biggest one that I always go for is kind of the Hawke conjecture model, is this assumption that species are going to keep spreading out into areas they value. And so if we assume the universe has a value to them, and it might not. I mean, if you learn how to create matter and energy from nothing, then who cares about the rest of the universe other than to explore it? But as long as matter and energy have a value to them, then they should be spreading out to take advantage of that until they bump into people. And so it should be really easy to spot these civilizations, because you shouldn't even need a telescope. You should be able to look outdoors where they've set up, you know, Syrian Starbucks, you know, of hamburger joint from Vega. These places should be on Earth already. And that's kind of the first biggest problem with the Fermi paradox is you know some conclusion you're having has to be, you know, some fundamental concept we have has to be wrong for it to make sense. Even with the rare earth or rare technology scenarios we discussed, we tend to assume life is going to evolve almost any place it can, and that it should evolve towards intelligence, and that intelligence should value technology. So either that assumption is wrong, which does seem like the most likely scenario, is that we just overestimate how likely technological civilizations are to arise, or some other fundamental, you know, paradigm of our existence has to be wrong. Maybe it's thermodynamics, maybe it's the size of the universe, maybe we're, you know, in a simulated universe that only has us. Whatever it is, some fundamental paradigm has to be wrong for us to answer the Fermi paradox.
Now, regarding the Fermi paradox, of course, there are many, many possible solutions. What one do you suspect is at heart? I have one, and I'll get into that in a minute, but what do you suspect that the most likely solution is?
Rare technology. I think it's going to be a combination of filters, of course, but how likely is life to arise? Life might be very likely or it might be very unlikely, but if it's very unlikely, then maybe technology is likely. It just doesn't happen much. I figure somewhere along the chain between when life starts and when it starts making radios, there's got to be some filters in place that really make that less likely. So I usually say rare technology rather than rare earth, because I don't think earth is going to turn out to be all that rare, and I don't personally think that life will turn out to be too rare. Maybe even intelligence is common, but very rarely develops technology. I just think that you get a combination of filters that make technology a very rare thing, and I think that I would say that one's the area where I think it's a 50-50 chance, whereas most other ones I'd put as pretty improbable. So it, to me, is the clear forerunner, but nowhere near solid yet.
The one that gets me, the one that I can't get past, is the leap from prokaryotic to eukaryotic life. Because it took Earth 1.8 billion years, Earth life, to do that, to actually make that leap. And it asks a microbe to absorb and incorporate something into itself rather than digest it. And that just doesn't seem to me to be very likely. So when I look at the universe, I think in terms of a microbial universe, where analogs of prokaryotes may be everywhere. They may be everywhere in our solar system. We may find them at Europa. We may find them underneath the surface of Mars. But what we might not find are the eukaryotes.
That's always struck me as one of the easier ones to sell on is anytime you have a step in evolution that seems to have taken a long time, that's a good pick for a filter. Anytime you have something multiply, like we'll say multicellular life, say it can't be multicellular life, that's evolved on Earth like a couple dozen times. Or it can't be something like the eyeball because that's evolved independently a couple dozen times. You know, something like eukaryotes. That is a very probable one because, again, a billion years from then to when they developed? And the same one, when did the brain first pop in? A complex brain that took up a large percentage of mass. But I would say I would not be surprised to find prokaryotic life everywhere, but complex multicellular life almost nowhere, just because it never made that jump to essentially to absorbing another organism. And we see that like mitochondria, right? That's our powerhouse. We would not be what we are without that. Yet that is, as best we can tell, that's another organism we ate, but did not digest. So that's another one that I would say is a pretty good chance too. And, it might be that something like that is 1 in a billion, and there's your answer right there to the Fermi paradox, or it might be something where it's only 1 in 10 and these things just keep stacking up. Evidence-wise, it's why I say rare technology is the only one I can be sure about is that technological life is very rare. Whether that's because almost nobody ever gets around to inventing complex technology and all the universe is full of civilizations that are basically cavemen, or whether it's because every planet's covered in algae and nothing more complex. I don't think we're there yet to be able to say for sure, but if I had to put money down, I would say the eukaryotic one would definitely be a good filter.
I think that would probably be filter number one, so to speak, but there are many others. You could say that absence of plate tectonics, not allowing for a carbon cycle could sink an exoplanet, or...
Okay, well, there always used to be the moon was the example, but then they did a model saying that maybe 1 in 12 planets, or something like that, 5% of planets that are Earth-like would probably have a large moon. So that one didn't turn out to be too great of a filter. But it could be a bunch of minor filters stacking up, or there could be some really big ones. And it doesn't have to be either or, it can be all of the above. We can say probably less than 1 in a trillion planets develops intelligent life, or has developed it yet. It should get more common as time goes on. But I would say the number's probably more like 1 in a quadrillion or even quintillion.
So even when you begin to eliminate the possibilities of, all of these filters, it's still, given the size of the universe and the abundance of galaxies and stars, it's still overwhelmingly likely that there has been or will be or is someone else somewhere. They just may be very distant.
Mm-hmm.
So in which case the solution to the Fermi paradox is distance. We're just simply distant, which unfortunately creates a situation where we may never know about other intelligent alien life because it may simply be too far away.
There could be some giant K3 civilization that predates us by 100 million years, but they're 101 million light years away, so we just haven't quite seen them yet. Right. But then you start getting that time factor is the further you look, the further back in time you're going. But the amount of value you're looking at and the amount of stars once you get up to the larger scale where things get homogeneous again, that's going up with the cubic distance. So you look at an area that's 1 billion light years across, it's got 1/8 the volume of an area that's 2 billion light years across. You say, Well, we'd see anything within 500 million years ago that was in that 1 billion light-year diameter bubble, whereas we'd see things that were 1 billion years ago in the 2 billion light-year diameter one, but that one has 8 times as many stars in it. And so it does seem like the further out you're looking, the less likely it's going to be until you get to about maybe 3 billion years ago, and you start saying, well, I can't see anything having evolved to K3 status 3 billion years ago. You know, that maybe that's a little bit too early. And I mean, I think you can start putting a stamp on it realistically probably about 4 billion years ago, because you didn't even start having high metallicity planets until about 8 billion years ago, any sort of real large numbers. But there's the other aspect that gets into this is those kind of planets get more common as the universe gets older. And you know, the ones that do evolve life have had more time for that to get complex. So you know, maybe 5 billion years ago, only a handful of planets could realistically support life. Another billion years later, that's going to have gone up. And those handful that did have life have had an extra billion years to catch up on evolution. So, you know, I think we're probably the first, certainly in this galaxy, unless we got a really, really strange flaw in our thinking about this stuff. But I think if you were to jump back, you know, a couple billion years from now, you'd probably find life all over the place, even if people hadn't colonized.
It could be argued that we're early in the game and that we're first in the Milky Way, which actually leads to two possibilities. That at some point, say we survive and we're around for billions of years as a civilization, that someone else will arise, but also an idea that we took on with one of our collaborations is that we may end up creating the aliens.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, think about if we do ever find a solution to being able to go faster than light, the game does change a bit, but I don't expect us to ever do that. But as long as you're constrained by the speed of light, you are not going to have cohesive civilizations. I mean, we don't have cohesive civilizations on this planet, and we're less than a light second away from each other. Trying to do that even at the solar system scale is going to be iffy. You start trying to do that at the galactic scale, even if you have extended lifespans, 100,000 years to get a hello back from from Central Command back on Earth is not going to work out well for a civilization.
No, but that brings into another dimension, because if we tackle life extension and we can make humans live for many hundreds of thousands of years, nobody ever lives forever, but if you can somehow do that, these time frames, these distances shrink a bit, don't they?
There's two ways they can kind of shrink. We were talking about the black hole forming civilizations that might exist after all the stars have died off. In those, time effectively does slow down because the universe is a very dull and boring place, and you're sipping a tiny amount of energy to run on, though you're doing it hyper efficiently. In that sense, time generally slows. But in the context of like us, for instance, if we start going the digital immortality route, the cyborg AI thing, those people exist at probably a much faster subjective time rate than we do, running at, we move at about the speed of sound in terms of our thinking. A computer should be running at the speed of light, so they're probably experiencing about 1 million times as much subjective time, or even more, because they can get away with crunching your brain down smaller in that context. Whereas, the universe is pulling along at 1 million years for an event for a galaxy, because that's more or less how long it takes to get, whatever a second is for us. That to get interaction with the galactic scale, you're pretty much talking about 100,000 to 1 million years, because it's going to go back and forth. You try to have a civilization where everybody experiences a year in a minute of real time that has a time lag of 100,000 years to get a yes back to a simple question. I don't see that working out too well. That doesn't mean people don't colonize. You always colonize, but or I would think you would always colonize, but that doesn't mean they're really not really keeping a coherent system in place. I think even if they're long-lived, I just don't see it happening, even with the extended lifespan, just because even if they're not experiencing a subjectively faster rate of time, it's an eternity to hear back from anybody.
Yeah, an extremely long communications time. Now, you don't believe we're ever going to have FTL, faster than light travel.
No, I haven't seen the codes. I mean, who can say? Of course, we've only bet the science thing for 40 years and relativity for a century now, and it has been a century since general relativity even. But in that whole time, nobody has managed to even nick it. You know, it's every time we thought we had something, it fell apart on us. And it's been thousands of years since we discovered that 2 + 2 = 4, and no one's disproved that either. And I think that's going to turn out to be the case for FTL too.
I think my biggest problem with it is that any of the proposed ways to circumvent it always seem to require some type of exotic matter that we have absolutely no idea if that can even exist. It's allowed by science hypothetically.
It's not even so to say it's allowed. It's that it's not banned explicitly. You know?
Right.
And it's say, well, you got imaginary matter or imaginary mass or imaginary time. And say, well, okay, I could have an imaginary length on paper. I can have a negative length on paper. I can't hand someone a bucket that's got -5 gallons of water in it, but I can certainly use that number. And the fact that I can put on a piece of paper -5 gallons of water, and that makes complete sense for accounting, still doesn't allow me to actually take a sample of that. And now we do have some examples of off-shell mass or imaginary mass at the quantum scale, and so again, it's not explicitly banned is the better way to think of it, but. If somebody does find a way around it, that's great. I mean, for the Fermi paradox, it's just death. I mean, right now we can at least say nobody from another galaxy has really had time to develop and visit us yet. You get FTL in play, you start to worry about what's going on, not just in the observable universe, but outside the observable universe, which is probably much larger than. All
right, guys, I'm gonna get out of here for a while. I got some shit I need to do online. Hopefully I can do it online. I don't have to leave the house and go fill out paperwork and shit. Well, we shall see. I guess I'm gonna work my way through these skull pieces. Try to get a second layer of paint on these canvases before I go back to that reader's canvas, because that thing will not dry. I don't know why it's taking so long to dry. I'm betting on the weather, but instead of just keep trying to go back to it and do this and do that to it, I'll just wait it out. Like I said, I'll put a second layer of paint on this canvas. I'll pull out the next skull piece. I'll put a second layer of paint on that canvas, and then I'll go back to the readers and see if I can finish that one up, and then come back to the skull series. Alright guys, you always know I appreciate y'all chilling with me early in the morning while we do this art thing, and I'll get with y'all next time. Peace.